Hey, welcome to the Texas Values Report. This is Jonathan Saenz, president of Texas Values. Great to be with you on another glorious week in the state of Texas. I'm headed to the ballpark just after this show. I have not been to a baseball game yet, even this season, even though opening day was a week or so ago. Even the college baseball season's been going on for a while. So I will. I'm not going to leave too early, maybe half an hour or so to get myself down to the ballpark pretty soon. So I'm excited about that. My oldest son's going to be joining me. And nothing like spring baseball, certainly in the state of Texas. And I think I earned a little bit of R&R, okay, after about a 14 or 16-hour day yesterday, primarily at the state capitol. Not that that means I'm complaining, okay? That's with actually a lot of gratitude, if you will, in my voice and in my heart, even though I do have a headache that's coming on trying to convince me to not have a good day on Friday, but I'm resisting the opposite with a lot of the optimistic nature that I've always had. And we're going to talk a lot about that. A lot of good things to report from the Texas Capitol from yesterday, certainly throughout the week. A lot of great bills that are moving on the issues that we care about. I had a fantastic time in Washington, D.C. on Monday. I'm like, wait a minute, was that Monday? I've had quite the week. And so a lot of good things to cover and to talk about on this week's show. If you're new to the port, new to the show, we're talking Texas Values Report. We talk about the issues of faith, family, and freedom in the arenas of the courts, the legislature, and the media. And yes, we did have the weekly version of this on Wednesday, but this is a special version of it because of so many important things happening this week in the state of Texas. And we got a great guest today who's going to help us navigate through this conversation. State Senator Mayes Middleton represents the Senate District 10. This includes parts of Brazoria, Galveston, and Harris County, mostly on the southeast side of Houston or heading in that direction, where I was born and raised, not too far from those areas as well. Senator Middleton has been involved in his family as well in the oil and gas business, ranching, farming, and a lot of great things that make him a great Texan and a true fit for the Texas Senate. And he is the author of the Texas Women's Privacy Bill, which had a hearing in the Senate yesterday, a glorious hearing, a very important hearing. And with the support of our governor and lieutenant governor, we're confident this bill is going to get passed soon. Welcome back to the Texas Values Report, Senator Middleton.
Hey, thank you, Jonathan, for having me on today.
Well, you did a fantastic job yesterday, arguably one of the most important pieces of legislation that's heading through the process at the Texas Capitol this session, Senate Bill 240. There's an identical version of that over in the House by Representative Valerie Swanson, House Bill 239. And, you know, the variety of people we had testifying yesterday was quite extraordinary. And it's hard to pull a lot of people together like that on a short notice. But I like to say that's one of the things that we do best in understanding and you putting us in a position to do that. These are some people you've had relationships with, but also your leadership on this issue has allowed us that opportunity. And, you know, look, you're in your second term. Am I right? Second term, second session.
Second session,
In the Senate.
first term. We get 4 years in the Senate.
In the
The
Senate.
House is just 2.
But you were previously in the Texas House, so you're not a stranger to being in these roles in leadership. But look, I mean, I think, you know, it's fair to say you're certainly one of the emerging leaders in the Texas Senate when you take on bills like this, not to mention the Ten Commandments bill. We're going to, you know, in the Coach Kennedy bill that you're carrying and a lot of good things I know you care about. But let's talk about the hearing yesterday and just how you felt about it on your Senate Bill 240.
It was great. You know, Brooke Slusser, I don't know if y'all watched, I mean, powerful witness to why it's so important to not allow men into women's private spaces. She was on a volleyball team. You know, she had sacrificed years to train to have that position, hard-earned spot on a college team. And she was forced to room with the man. She didn't know it. They concealed it from her. When she found out, she did the right thing. She said something about it, and they took adverse action against her. So literally, they were saying she was the oppressor when really she was the one that was victimized by a man in her private space in her dormitory. I mean, it's really wrong. You know, I've got a 3-year-old daughter, Martha Ann, and it is really concerning about our family's safety, our daughter's safety when men are allowed to go in their private spaces like restrooms and locker rooms and showers. It's not right, and it's not common sense.
Well, you're absolutely right. Those are some of the many reasons why we have put so much effort into it. This is a priority bill, really number one for us to get past this session. We spent a lot of time on angles and aspects of this issue. And I want people to understand this Senate Bill 240, this bill protects women and girls from having men and boys go into their shower rooms, their locker rooms, their bathrooms, not just in a sports context, just not just at, athletic facility, public schools. This is any government building, local and state, and in the state of Texas, that you'll have that protection. And those can be some of the most vulnerable places, right? And
That's right.
And part of this, Senator Middleton, is this, and I touched upon this in my testimony, really this, the way the culture is now, that people are sort of nervous about saying anything, right? You'd have seen this happen 15, 20 years ago. You would have had people that have been ready to stop someone or to report something if they saw a man go into women's bathroom. Nowadays, people are worried they're going to get canceled, or to your point, they're going to be the ones that are look like the bad guy, or they're somehow going to be punished for stepping in and saying, wait a minute, you're not supposed to be in there, and why are you in here? Which has necessitated us having a state law. And I think that allows people to say, okay, I have the law on my side. Now I can say something, but these things can happen in a variety of different settings. Women's shelters, swimming pools that the public owns. I mean, the list goes on. And we had some people testify some of those things. You talked about Brooke Slusser, the young lady from Dripping Springs ISD. Okay, yeah. She's a high school senior, Shiloh, and how she testified in 2017 on this issue. Now she's back as a high school senior saying, can we please get this done now? Because this happened to her when she was in elementary school in Dripping Springs.
Well, and it's ridiculous because in 2017, you saw taxpayer-funded lobbyists like Texas Association of School Boards help kill that bill. They literally used your local tax dollars to lobby to get boys into girls' restrooms, locker rooms, and showers. And at the time, they said, oh, well, look, this is a solution in search of a problem. Well, this is happening. We had testimony in the Senate State Affairs Committee. They said there's a man and a woman's restroom in the Texas Capitol nearly every day. So we've got a reason right there alone to stop this. And, we heard from Riley Gaines a lot last session. I passed the Save Women's Sports Act, which kicks men out of women's college sports. Y'all were champions for that. Thank y'all for y'all's support on that bill. But, one of the first things she told me when she discovered that this man was going to compete against her, she saw him in her locker room, right? So Leah Thomas was in Riley's locker room at the University of Kentucky. And so we're fixing this problem, right? This is the next step in making sure that we protect fairness and opportunity for women. And this is fundamentally the right thing to do because it keeps women and our families safe. And at the end of the day, look, what this really does is it protects privacy. It protects the things that we're all supposed to believe in, which is keeping our children safe.
No, there's no doubt. And I'm going to share this on my Facebook feed. If you're watching at home, do that too. That was the audio from my phone. Let me share this because we want to have more people part of the conversation. If you want to ask a question in the comments, we'll do our best to address it either during the show and respond or shortly thereafter because I know this is a big deal. This issue is going to get a lot more attention. You're going to see a lot more people talk about it. We're going to engage in this discussion. This bill is going to go to the Senate floor very soon. We had an opportunity yesterday to meet with Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who had already expressed his concern about these issues on social media. But when Brooke Slusser, we took her and her family. This is a collegiate athlete who's from Denton, Texas, but she competed on the women's volleyball team at San Jose State University, briefly at the University of Alabama, but at San Jose State University, they had a male player on the team who she was rooming with. To her surprise, did not realize that this was a male athlete. And why should have she thought that? She should have been able to trust that the university was only allowing women to be on the women's volleyball team and to share a room and a hotel room and a bathroom, all these different things. But we had her meet with Lieutenant Governor And we didn't put him on the spot. We know he's supportive, but as we were walking out the door, he said he looked at Brooke and her family and said, "We're going to get this done this session." So I always love to hear those additional positive comments from our lieutenant governor, and we were glad that he spent some time with us on this issue. And you're right. You mentioned 2017. We had an opportunity to do this. People suggested that it wasn't as much of a concern. We felt like it was then. It certainly is now. And absolutely, to have the other side, Senator Middleton, say, not from us, for them to say, "Oh, it's happening all the time." We're like, we know. Thank you for finally being honest.
Well, Lieutenant Governor's been such a big champion of this bill. We're so blessed to have his support. And look, there was a president of the United States, Joe Biden, that supported an executive order to get rid of Title IX and encourage and allow boys and men into women's restrooms, locker rooms, and showers. So not only is it happening, there was a federal administrative action to encourage this kind of thing, which makes it even more important to pass this. Thankfully, President Trump has repealed that and it's gone. But we need to make sure this goes into law in the state of Texas. And that's why Senate Bill 240 is so important to pass.
No, you're absolutely right. And over on the House side, Valerie Swanson has this bill. We know it'll be making over to the House very soon, where it'll shift for the focus on the House. Valerie Swanson already has 80 co-authors and like one other person that's signed on to the bill. I think there's a Democrat, Sergio Munoz, so you've got bipartisan support. I would not be surprised if we see a Democrat or two on the Senate side that supports this bill when it comes to a full vote on the on the Senate floor. In addition to that, we met with the calendar chairman, Todd Hunter, talked about this issue. He said, this is going to get done. I don't see any reason why we're not going to pass this. And he said, as a matter of fact, when this bill gets passed out of my committee, out of calendars, I'm going to put my name on as a co-author. He talked about how a lot of times he doesn't do that until the bill has moved farther along in the process, because, you know, he wants to show some fairness when bills come through his calendars committee. And we appreciated that conversation with him. We know that there are Democrats in the House, in addition to Sergio Munoz, that have seen this issue. A lot of that is them realizing the election results. The culture has moved in a direction to say, we need to handle these issues, and they're not difficult. Martina Navratilova, one of the most famous and successful tennis players and one of the most famous lesbians, right, that's been a part of that movement. She's out there saying we shouldn't have men in women's sports. We shouldn't have men and women in their locker rooms and shower rooms. So this is not an issue of left and right. This is an issue of right and wrong and common sense. But having a state law that makes it consistent across the state is such an important part of this process.
Exactly. And, you know, we know God only made two sexes, and y'all supported another important bill that we passed in the Senate this week, Senate Bill 406, that says you can never change the sex on your birth certificate. So there's no more of these unlawful court orders changing sex based on radical gender ideology that we've seen throughout this nation. Of course, that happened the most in Travis County.
No, it has. It's been out of control. And it's really been, I mean, they're sort of bragging about it a lot of times. People know in that side, you know, of the issue that, oh, we'll just go to Travis County. We know there are judges there that'll get this done. I want to mention another bill, too, the Coach Kennedy Religious Freedom Bill. I know of yours has gotten passed. That is a very important religious freedom bill for public schools. As a matter of fact, Coach Kennedy texted me earlier today. I don't know where he is, somewhere with Riley Gaines. He had a picture with Riley Gaines that they were doing some event together. That's an important issue. We know the Senate passed the Ten Commandments bill that Phil King is carrying. A lot of good movement, of bills that are coming through. You guys are being very efficient at your work. Hopefully we'll see, the House get moving on some of these issues soon. But these are core issues with opportunities, whether it's in one way or another that we fit these areas into law, that we get them covered. I mean, the alignment we have from the president all the way down to our governor, to the members of the House and Senate. The House has a lot more stronger values-based members than it had the previous session. And this is coming from voters saying the pendulum swung too far that direction. We need to swing it back.
It's a return to common sense. I mean, and on SB 11, the prayer in public school bill, you've got to ask the question, are we better or are we worse off since prayer was taken out of public school? And we know we're worse off, and that's why it's so important to pass a bill like that, to put prayer back in our public schools. And thank y'all for y'all's support on SB 11. I feel confident that we're going to be able to get that done this legislative session.
No, I do too. And, it's interesting. We were walking around the Capitol while the Senate was on the floor and the committee hearing was was on pause, if you will, with Brooke Slusser. This is the female athlete from Denton who competed at San Jose State, had a man on her team unbeknownst to her, and she was also rooming with this guy before she found out the truth about it. We also had Cassidy Comer Barreras, who is a former collegiate basketball player from the north part of Texas, Midwestern State. But we also did work with Coach Joe Kennedy on that bill. So, a lot of times what we'll do as an organization, we will spend time at the Capitol with these key witnesses, these invited witnesses, these people that can really capture the right attention and have a personal touch on these issues, and giving them a chance to meet with different members. Brooke got to meet with, I mentioned Lieutenant Governor, but other members of the legislature that were not a part of the Senate committee. That was Jeff Leach, Matt Shaheen over in the House, and then Senator Brandon Creighton, who had his plate full yesterday in Senate Education, and a lot of other great members. Joan Huffman, we got to spend some time with in the back hallway. So that's what we can do at Texas Values. So if you see issues we need to work on and you want to partner with us and make sure that your issue gets heard at the Capitol, we're pretty darn good at that. But having the right bills filed and the strength and leadership like yourself, Senator Middleton, is a big part of it. And look, I mentioned this in my testimony. Local governments, they're going to have some kind of rule or policy on this, whether it's written or not, on how to handle it. And if they're sort of out there willy-nilly, walking around in the dark, or, God forbid, right, TASB is telling them, Texas Association of School Boards is trying to tell them how to handle this issue, you can just about guarantee they're going to go in the opposite direction and follow what Biden said instead of following common sense on these issues. And that's why having a state law like you're working on with Senate Bill 240 makes it consistent across the state. Otherwise, who knows what they're going to do.
That's right. It's that consistency to keep women and children safe.
Yeah, well, listen, I know there's a lot going on at the Senate. You guys put in a full week of work. You certainly did yesterday. I know you were between a couple of different committees, and we had some, just tremendous witnesses. You were able to engage with them and continue to push on this issue and move it forward. That's why I think Senate Bill 240, the Texas Women's Privacy Bill, is on the right track, if not the fast track, to get done. And Senator Middleton, we thank you for your leadership on that issue, and we thank you for being our guest today on the Texas Values Report.
Hey, Jonathan, thank you for having me on. Thank you for all your help in our faith, family, and freedom legislation.
You bet. God bless you, sir. All right, listen, we did spend a lot of time at the Capitol yesterday. And that's not unusual, but I think I rolled into the office at 7:30. That means I got out of bed probably just a little bit before 6 because I got kids to feed, I got a dog to feed and a dog to walk. I got my own self to get my act together to get out the door. And I don't live down the street from the Capitol, okay? And so, but from, just the jump, right? As soon as we got on the ground at our office in the Capitol, we were putting everything together. And it wasn't like we were fumbling and doing it as we were walking along. This is a process. This is a strategy. And this is an approach that we have been preparing and working on for months, waiting for that hearing, being ready for it, getting everything in order. And then yesterday was like the Super Bowl. It was like go time. I was kind of describing this to the team, right? The Senate hearings, the committee hearings are like the Final Four game. And then when your bill goes to the floor, that's the championship game, right? To make a little bit of a basketball analogy for this weekend and the men and women's sports that are going on. As a matter of fact, I think the Final Four is in San Antonio this year. Is it the men's or women's? I forget. But I know one of them is here in the great state of Texas. And, these are big days, right? I mean, not every bill gets a hearing. And sometimes the issues we work on, it can take a little bit more work because we know some people can be divided. This issue is a little different, though. Like I mentioned, I think we've got Democrats that are supporting it. We're going to see more of that, particularly with the election results, particularly as we're seeing more incidents of things happening where, women are being harmed, they're being taken advantage of, and they're being demeaned, right? I mentioned this in my testimony. In Round Rock ISD, okay, just a few years ago, there was a young lady who was startled and surprised, and so were her parents, when she found out that there was a male student undressing in her bathroom and locker room as a part of the competitive band, okay? So the student knew, the student's parents, the male student's parents knew that he was going to do that. Nobody else did, right? This is how they think about young women these days. We don't need to tell you that a man's coming into your bathroom. We don't need to tell you that you might end up undressing next to it. And we don't even need to tell the parents because we don't care, or it doesn't matter, or you're too sensitive, or get over it, or whatever the excuses and reasons are. It's nonsense, okay? And you know what Round Rock ISD Go back and watch my testimony. I went into a little bit more detail, but their solution to this problem, and to them, from what I could tell by reading the documents that we got through open records request, to them the problem was, oh, this male student might have difficulty with this circumstance. What about how he's going to feel, right? And they kept referring to him as I believe, as a female when he's not, right? But they want you to believe that, oh, well, that changes things. It doesn't, okay? This is a male student. It should be treated the same way no matter what he thinks about himself or how he wants to dress, okay? But their sensitivity and concern was primarily, if not completely, focused on him. Oh, the young ladies, particularly this one that was concerned about it, who wanted to remain anonymous on this issue, here's what they said was the solution. Let's put some pop-up tent around her in the middle of the locker room. I don't even know what they're talking about, okay, first of all. But I could just maybe imagine what some kind of mechanism like that looks like. That somehow protects her privacy and dignity, and, by having, I don't know what kind of, material around her, and how do you structure some pop-up tent? Is this something they do out in the woods? I don't know, okay? She's still in that space. She's still in close proximity. And why are the women having to do all these different things to accommodate one individual? She was so humiliated by such a ridiculous solution, if you will. She refused to do it. She went home every day when she had to change and then came back and disrupted her school day. Not to mention the type of stress and how difficult it was for her and the trauma she experienced by having to go through this. That's what some people think about young women. They'll be okay. They'll get over it. We're not concerned about them. Deal with it. That's the attitude. And that's why we need to have a law like this in place. Otherwise, you're not going to hear about these things. The Round Rock School District didn't vote on this. They didn't give people advance notice. You would not have been aware of it. It was time after time. Parents were complaining and bringing concerns, and we dug into it and found out it. By the way, when you hear us talk about these things, we call these shadow policies because they operate in the shadows where you can't see them or they don't think people can see them. Why is that? Because this is a policy. They want you to believe we don't really have an approach, right? Because they don't want to take a vote on it. They don't want people to see this all play out publicly because they know that people would bring heat on them and there'd be people lined up around the corner testifying against this on the school board. And then they might have some accountability at the ballot box, right? So, but that's how they're operating. So we call them shadow policies, or maybe even the law like a de facto policy. That is your policy when that's how you operate, whether or not it's written down in black and white or not. All right, so now I'm getting all worked up about the issue. We're going to run out of time. Check out my testimony yesterday. It's on social media, and really forget about my testimony to some extent. Some of the other young ladies and people that that testified yesterday in favor of Senate Bill 240, absolutely extraordinary. Thank you, by the way. Riley Gaines could not make it to the Capitol yesterday, but she did allow us to put out a statement and a quote in support of Senate Bill 240, which was absolutely fantastic. I did get a note from one of her colleagues, if you will, Paula Scanlon, who was a teammate of Will Thomas, this male athlete that was on the women's team calling himself Leah Thomas. By the way, he's from Texas. I don't know if you know that. You've seen some of those stories. He was on the men's high school swimming team at Westlake, Austin Westlake. I'm sure you're familiar with that if you live around the Austin area. In the amazing sports programs that school has, that's where he competed as a male student on swimming, and then went to University of Pennsylvania, still on the men's team, and then went over to the women's teams. Paula Scanlon was on that team as a female collegiate athlete, and she has her concerns and supports this bill. So do a lot of other people. You're going to hear from Brooke Slusser. I think we've got confirmation. Maybe we don't. We have an event on May 10th in Fort Worth. Dr. Eitan Heim, who is a whistleblower and a survivor of the Department of Justice indictment, he is going to be speaking there about the importance of his freedom, the importance of protecting whistleblowers, which we also did yesterday with a Senate bill that was earlier in the process. I believe 2043 is that bill number from Chairman and Senator Brian Hughes. He's going to be our keynote speaker along with our MC from Tarrant County Judge Tim O'Hare. But I believe Brooke Slusser is going to be added at some point to that program. This young lady is fantastic, okay? And you got to hear her tell more of the story herself and how she triumphed or weathered that storm, and she's suing the NCAA over a lot of this stuff along with the Attorney General of our state, Ken Paxton. So a lot of good stuff. So that is on May 10th. That is our legislative update and benefit dinner in Fort Worth at the Worthington Renaissance. Listen, we had great pastors at the Capitol this week with our Church Ambassador Network of Texas. If you hear of some other individuals in the state telling you that they run the Church Ambassador Network of Texas, this is inaccurate. Those people left our team many years ago and continue to tell people this and mislead them and perpetuate this inaccurate information. I'm sorry to report that to you, but that is the case. The Church Ambassador Network of Texas is led by Pastor Jorge Tovar and other volunteer members of our team. So go to our website, txvalues.org, click the Church Ambassador Network of Texas link, and you can see more information about that and the work that we're doing. And we're going to continue to be handing out Bibles to those different members of the legislature in the House and the Senate, and Pastor Tovar is leading that. If you're a pastor or a church leader, you'd like to be a part of that ministry and that part of our work, please connect with us on our website and connect with Pastor Tovar. We're going to be sending out text alerts very soon on a lot of our work as things start moving quickly at the Texas legislature. Listen, I'm just telling you, we really need your donations. This part of our work in this time period gets incredibly expensive, right? The hearing that we were a part of, a lot of the logistics, the barbecue sandwiches we brought to the Capitol, just as in addition to the staff time, a lot of travel. We had members of our team travel from different parts of the state. The amount of work we put into the media. We had incredible social media and traditional media response and coverage yesterday. Comes with a price, okay? And we can't, control this timing. It happens when it happens. We can raise the money later, but I can't go back in time and, redo these hearings. We got to just roll with it when it happens. Please consider a tax-deductible donation. Our collective budget is $2 million, okay? We got to raise a lot of money. So if you're thinking, well, how much do you guys need? Between now and the end of June, our fiscal year, we need to raise about $1 million, okay? That's a lot of money. I get it. But look at the level of the work we do. Look at the protections we're putting in place, the lives we're saving with our pro-life work and other things of that nature. You can't put a price on it, but it does come with a price as it relates to our expenses. So please consider a very generous tax-deductible donation at txvalues.org. And look, the work that we do is ongoing. It doesn't end when the legislative session ends, but that is one of the more expensive times in the concentration of our work. And also, that is the end of the legislative cycle. Means we got to wait another 2 years to get anything done on these issues. So, hey, real quick, by the way, I'm just trying to send a note to my communications manager because I lost track of how much time I have left in the podcast. So if you can send me a note, I'm going to be watching for your message because our timer is not running. So, but listen, go to our website, txvalues.org. Oh, by the way, Texas Values University, I promise, is about to launch. We're continuing to review it, add some little enhancements. This is the online education portal. You're going to love it, okay? You're going to be so equipped. We built a lot of great information into that, a lot of great online courses. TexasValuesUniversity.com is going to be launching very soon. 2 years in the works, okay? But I'm super excited about that. That's how we can multiply our efforts through the state of Texas. No matter where you live, you can get educated and trained up and be effective on our issues. And that's how together we can protect faith, family, and freedom in Texas. And we'll talk to you next week on the Texas Values Report.